Oh, you did.
I'm
Great.
the magic.
Thanks.
It
Thanks.
stopped the nice music though. It was so nice.
No, dude, that
Kinda.
music, it made me feel like I was in Pokemon. Like, it made me feel I was walking along some, like, I don't know, a lake or a river, and, there wasn't anyone around me to want to battle me. It was very
Really does
chill.
sound
You
like
feel great.
Discord has the best waiting room lounge music. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Better
I love
than
it.
Slack. The Slack huddles.
The Slack one really sounds like an old building's elevator. Like, it doesn't sound like this.
On purpose.
That's because Slack is made by boomers.
It's already for boomers.
Actually,
We're all boomers.
do you know the story of Slack?
No.
Slack was actually the startup that made Slack was actually a games company.
Oh!
And Slack originally started out as the chat from inside the game. It was like a social MMO. And actually the game was really nice. It's called Glitch. If anyone is old enough to have played it, you can go Google it.
You're revealing your age, Abel.
Yeah. But that's how Slack got started. It was actually a games company. So a lot of people don't know that. Still miss
guy
playing
also
that game.
he started Flickr as well, right? Was it Flickr or Tumblr? One of those old ones.
I think it was Flickr.
And that also started as a game. It was the same story.
Yeah, and actually, cool. This is, I guess, a cool story as well. The creator of Katamari Damacy, the art lead for that game, actually joined the team at some point to work on the art for the game. So it was very in the same style, and the game was really, really nice. It was ahead of its time, actually. It's fully browser based MMO.
You think you will ever be able to build a game?
Dude, I'm gonna say something spicy, but I think many people think they can build games because you always have the Unity asset store.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with AI, maybe it gets easier.
Yeah.
Nah, anyone can make a game. It's just how good the game is. You can make a game in like 10 minutes, right?
To be fair though,
one line of code.
During COVID, I played this golf game called Golf with Your Friends. It was so good. It was so funny, but I played it with some of my friends who worked on the StarCraft development team. And they just kept laughing at the game because they would look at every single asset and be like, "That's from the Unity store," and somehow that made the experience extra funny.
All right, I think the recording has started, so it
Yeah.
seems to be working. So I guess we can start anytime.
We've got a bunch of people in the audience already, so yeah, I think the first thing we should probably do is reintroduce ourselves. I think the last time we had an actual town hall was really I think it was when we actually pushed our mints, so it's really been a while. I'll be the host of the stage today, so I'll let the others introduce themselves first before I go, and then I'll kind of run through what all you listeners can expect today. So Abel, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And my name is Abel. I'm or Daijo on the server. And I'm a design manager for Mighty Bear Games. And right now I'm working very closely with Michael, us Accent, here in the chat. Basically, right now I'm focusing on basically making sure that the team kind of, thinks about Web3 and both Web3 and Web2 features when building the game. So basically, I'm kind of overseeing both the Web3 and Web2 design aspects of the game. We're working very closely with the two other people in Discord today. So yeah, nice to meet everyone.
Let's have Michael go next.
Okay, GM everybody. Also still waking up. We're actually all in. Yes, 3 of us are in Singapore. 1 is in Japan, so it's all morning for us.
It's too early.
Too early. Anyways, yeah, I'm Michael. Been with Mighty Bear Games for over a year now. Originally joined to kind of help the company from Web 2 to Web 3. I myself have a more extensive Web 3 background. I would say the most in the team currently. So I worked before in a company in Japan called Double Jump Tokyo. We built a game called My Crypto Heroes, which basically was the #1 blockchain game back in like 2018, 19, and early 2020. And I worked there in engineering, but also helped a bit on the game economy and game ecosystem design because I have an economics background. And then in 2021, worked with YGG, helped them with tokenomics in the early days. Then worked with Blackpool Finance. It's another NFT gaming DAO or guild. And then joined Mighty Bear Games in January 2022. So it's been over a year now. I'm basically helping the company and everybody in the company make sense of Web3. I think, for those who following us for a bit now, we actually shifted the entire company from Web 2 to Web 3. We don't build any Web 2 titles anymore right now. It's all Web 3. So there's also a big cultural shift in the company that's happening, hiring of key roles and all that. So I'm helping a lot with this. Specifically, I'm working more with the engineering team, focusing on smart contracts, the web app, so the Mint, for example, then also the NFT locking that I think we will talk a bit about that's coming soon. That's on my plate. And then also that anything that touches NFT economics, working very closely with Abel and also with Tom to like make sure things make sense in the game, but also make sense from a tokenomics perspective in terms of like how many NFTs do you have, how many new heroes, weapons, gadgets, it's a lot of alpha already, are you going to introduce? So it's a lot of like balancing and modeling that I'm working on. And yeah, I'm based in Japan actually, so I'm the odd one out. I'm working remotely from Japan, but I'm flying to Singapore from time to time. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Michael has a favorite hotel in Singapore. It's almost like home now.
That's right. Singapore is my third home now. My first home is Germany. That's where I grew up. My second home is Japan. My third home I feel like is Singapore. Lately, it's nice when you come back to the same hotel. They recognize you, and that's nice.
Yeah, he even gets like fancy breakfast. He gets to go to the lounge. But we won't keep talking about the hotel. It's time for Tom to introduce himself.
Hello, I'm Tom. So yeah, I'm the game lead. I'm actually originally from the UK, but I'm here in Singapore with Abel and Marianne. So what I have been working on recently is deciding what features go into the game on the roadmap and kind of owning the game side of things. And as we're building towards EA2, I'm giving a lot of feedback on the features we're actually working on. And like Michael and Abel mentioned, like we're talking a lot about what comes next as well. So there's been a lot of discussions about that. Good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys for making time this morning. So, to everyone in the audience, we tried to get as good a mix as possible of people to kind of represent the Mighty Action Heroes team and chat on this stage. Here to wrap things up, and kind of be the person helping you drive the conversation is me. Hi, I'm Marianne. You may have seen me around in the Discord. My primary role is just marketing and communications for Mighty Action Heroes. I work a lot on programs like you may have seen DGen 100 in our airwaves recently. You may have seen a lot of tweets from the Mighty Action Heroes Twitter account. Those are the things I primarily work on. I also moonlight as a Spaces host, as you can tell. But enough about ourselves. I think we're all, even though it's really early for us, we're all glad to be here. Just a little bit of context as to why we're holding this space in the morning. We previously used to run our spaces and town halls at night, but we're kind of doing a little experiment here to see if we, if this is a better time for the Discord, because when we looked at our stats, it actually showed we had a lot of we had the majority of our users from the US. So if you actually think we should do this at a different time, please feel free, absolutely free to let us know in general chat, or drop us a line. Sorry. But yeah, I think we're gonna jump into the meat of the town hall now. One big reason why we kind of cobbled this together really quickly was because we recently, I think, as a project, we've been focused a lot on building. I think that's a pretty natural reaction for the Mighty Bear Games team because at the end of the day, we are a game studio. But what we've come to learn over the years. Sorry, not the years. What we've come to learn over the months. It hasn't been quite a year yet. Is that even though we're building a game, it's a Web3 game, and a large part of our audience, especially our early audience, are folk who live and breathe Web3. And Web3 is a little different from Web2 in that there's a much larger focus on community. There are very different expectations because your players are not just your players. They're people who hold assets, who kind of have a stake in your game. And they do expect a certain level of transparency. I think this was something that we tried to keep up with at the start of our project, and we unfortunately kind of deprioritized along the way because we were so intent on getting a good game built out for you guys in time in December. That I have to say, watching the team, I'm not in dev, right? So I kind of had an outside view. That was a really heroic effort, but that's also no excuse for why we've kind of been missing in action in terms of comms all this while. We've basically just been building in stealth, but very early this year, we realized that, hey, we're actually losing a lot of our core community, and that's because we're just not communicating. We realized that building the way we used to in the Web2 world was the wrong way to go. And that's why if you've noticed, I've been in the Discord a lot more. We've been starting to try and do a lot more things in terms of collabs with other companies in the space, in terms of sharing more information on what we're building, what we're doing. You may even have seen some recent behind the scenes sneak peeks of art in the alpha channel. If you're a holder, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you should be a holder because it's pretty cool. But yeah, all of this is really to say that we are intent on this, change in direction. We want to keep speaking more to our community. We want to keep on being more accessible. I think you can definitely think of folk like myself, CryptoKate, and Jeremy as the first line of communication and connection with the rest of the team because we're the ones who are going to have the most time to spend in the Discord. But subsequently, everything that's shared with us is taken back, is kind of summarized, parsed through, and brought back to the team. The team being folk like Abel, Michael, and Tom. Yeah, that's why we've been MIA. Where at the end of the day, we're really sorry. I think we have to do better at keeping our holders in mind and remembering that in Web3, our community is not just players; they're also building together with us. So I guess I also want to add that if you see us kind of slipping, feel absolutely free to point it out and hold people accountable. I think we do want to start doing a lot better, but sometimes, we're only human. We have blind spots. So any sort of feedback will always be very appreciated. My friends on stage, do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. Well said. Just want to give a bit more transparency as well, in terms of early access and how we think about when we do that and all these things. Yeah, so we're thinking, okay, what's the most important thing in the space right now? And we don't really like just hype without shipping and delivering. So we were like, okay, the most important thing that we need to do is to ship. And then we're actually thinking, okay, what's the best shipping cadence? Meaning that how often should we release a new early access version for the users? And we were initially kind of thinking, okay, every 2 weeks would be great. But then we kind of mapped it out and kind of figured out, okay, what can we do every 2 weeks? And, we can improve things, we can fix some bugs, but we feel like there's not enough as an improvement every 2 weeks to kind of show to the community. So, if you bring the community together again to kind of play the next EA, the update should be meaningful. So that's why we also kind of moved out the shipping cadence to, I think now we're at 6 weeks in between, just to kind of share a bit of where we're thinking right now. And that is enough to kind of get more exciting updates in. So I think we talk more later about what's in the next EA, but it will feel significantly different. And that's what we're aiming for, and it's also for you guys to see kind of, okay, what's the difference of the last early access to this early access, to kind of understand the trajectory of where we're going and what we're building. Yeah, just also kind of sharing a bit the internal communication and conversations that we were having. It's also because it's hard to break through the noise still in Web3. I mean, bear markets are a bit quieter, but I feel like there's still a lot of noise out there. And we don't really want to compete for just, contentless hype. We want to compete for actual valuable shipping. That's what we stand for. But we do understand that we need to keep the communication up. And keeping communication up means also, even though there's no EA, we also have to communicate what's going on right now. So as Marianne said, this was on us, and we are excited that we have people in the community that don't shy away to give it that direct feedback to us, which we as a company really like. That's actually one of our cultures in the company that we pride ourselves with. So I see Lems actually being here, so thank you for keeping us to high standards, my sir. Really,
Yeah.
I really like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Shout out to Lems and Uncle Brian as well.
Yeah, Sir Uncle Brian, if you listen to this from the recording, and other folks also in the community, I think we're really, really grateful that we have incredible people here that serve as a basis for what's to come. Abel, I saw that you, I think, also muted yourself. Do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, no, thanks for kind of putting it and summarizing it very well. I think, with the current state of the project, I think we've been really kind of pushing really hard on the game and the Web3 side of things. It's not always very kind of evident, based on the communications that we put out, but I think for us it makes sense that we kind of just make sure that we focus on what we do best, which is building, and then when we're ready, kind of roll things out in a way that makes sense for our holders as well. So we kind of don't want to just like slow trickle, small updates here and there. Like, here's a new ability, like here's dodge roll, and here's maybe a new weapon. Like, we kind of want to think about it in terms of milestones as well, and kind of bundle them together in ways that feel meaningful for the players. So I think you'll see a little bit of that in EA2, and then you see that EA3 is a really big milestone for us. And then going forward, that's gonna kind of be the same kind of story as we head towards the launch of the game. We're going to share a bit about what we're going to work on in the next couple of versions, but I think ultimately, I think Michael touched on this. Like, for us, it's very important to make sure that we focus on the game and focus on providing value for our holders. So I think these two kind of things are like what we're those are what we're focusing on as we head towards the launch of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to the points that they've made, a lot of keeping the community updated also falls on like the marketing and community team. So it's something that we've been working on in order to improve the experience for you guys. We've been looking at adding headcount to the team. There actually is approved headcount. If you're interested in a career with us, you can always go to mightybeargames.com/careers. But we're actively looking to expand the team also, so everything doesn't just fall on a couple of people and create bottlenecks. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear what the direction that we want to move in next. I think we want to make sure that we don't go too over time today. So I think we're going to talk about updates on roadmap changes. I think this was called out by some members of the community. We did announce we did announce a roadmap last year that's since changed a little bit. I think Michael can share a little bit more, particularly on locking. Michael, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. So just continuing the transparency train. So with locking and kind of why we shifted this back a bit. And actually, I mean, we originally wanted to launch locking before the first EA. That was actually the first plan. And we were like, all right, let's get locking out of the way. But then we were like, okay, we don't really want to create hype before we actually launched any playable version. So we're like, okay, let's do locking after, because again, we want the game to speak for itself, and not the floor price become the game. And then we wanted to, we announced locking in Q1 this year. We kind of mapped out, okay, how does the ideal locking experience look like? Which is basically users are locking their NFTs, and that is the Big Bear Syndicate PFPs, but also the Mighty Genesis Pass. And it's going to be a time lock, so it's kind of similar if you guys are familiar with DeFi terms, like the V model that Curve is doing. So the longer you lock, the more rewards you get. There's like a time boost. Also similar with like the early days at Treasure and Magic, if you're familiar with that ecosystem where you could lock your NFTs and tokens for with the time lock basically. So we're kind of following that model. We like that because it kind of rewards the long-term believers that can want to lock their NFTs for a few months, even up to a year. But we were thinking, okay, this experience needs to be meaningful. Like we shouldn't just like lock NFTs and get your points that we used to call honey. There's actually a bit of a branding change incoming, but more about this later. So that you lock your NFTs for points, and then you spend them on loot crates, and those loot crates are used for crafting. The next question is, all right, what can you craft, and how can you craft, and where do you craft? And once we were fleshing out all these things, we came to realization, okay, that actually adjusts a bit of when we should launch locking, because if we launch it too early and the crafting experience comes too late, then users just accumulate a lot of points, and that is not great for the the rewards price, because then all of a sudden when the crafting starts, there's going to be a lot of resources in circulation, and that's just not that great for the price. So that's why we kind of were like, okay, let's move the locking launch closer to the crafting launch, which is why basically we moved locking a bit back again. We are aiming right now early Q2. We will communicate more like the actual dates. We actually, again, full transparency, we're actually still fleshing out exactly how this looks like. Also, there is a lot of legal back and forth that you want to stay compliant as a company. I mean, we're a back company. We're all doxed. We want to stay on the more compliant side of the legal spectrum. Let's put it that way. So I've been looking into a lot of like security law, gambling law, and actually custody law, which comes with locking. That is all now done and solved and out of the way. So we're very compliant with this, but it also meant we had to adjust a bit of the things we do with the locking. But now it's just a matter of finishing up. And for the crafting, actually, is something that Abel and Tom and we talked a lot about the last few weeks, almost months. That is all on the way right now, currently being built. So things are moving. But it's just like I just wanted to share this to have everybody understand how everything fits together in terms of when locking starts, when crafting starts, thinking about how many rewards come into circulation into the market, and make sure that the prices don't immediately crash when it launches. Like it needs to be mapped out that there's not too much supply when the demand is just picking up, and then also when the craftable stuff is in the game, that is also another timing of like, okay, when can you actually play with the things that you can craft. So these are just like all moving parts that are coming together. So just sharing a bit of a transparency here.
Thank you, Michael. I think I just saw our project manager join the audience. I'm not gonna dox her right now, but I think that reminded me. One thing that's been really challenging for
always
us
watching.
also.
He's always
Yeah,
watching, Marianne.
she's gonna tell us what to do next. But one thing that's been pretty challenging for us to navigate has always been, how quickly the market has moved. With DGen 100, we actually extended the first stage because we got some feedback that some folk have day jobs and they need time to put their threads together. But on the other hand, there were also people who said that Web3 is 24/7, and that's something that we've been trying very hard to find a balance with, because the market moves so fast. We found ourselves constantly having to replan the roadmap and rescope things, and that caused a lot of challenges in both building and shipping those features, which I think Tom can give you a bit more color on.
Yeah, that's right. So moving into early access 2 and 3, we've been thinking a lot about which features we're going to get in and which order we're going to do them. So on the early access 2 side, for example, we're picking out which of the 2 abilities we wanted to showcase to the community first, and get that actually feeding into something Abel mentioned earlier, get that feedback straight away from the community. It's like a really good chance to get some opinions out there, see how people feel about the controls and that side of things. So.
Abel, I feel like you've been working a lot with the dev team recently. Is there anything you'd like to add to what Tom shared?
So on my side, I've just been thinking a lot about just player progression and how players are, going to be able to, not just like, play a fun game of fun round of Battle Royale, but, give them meaningful reasons why they want to stay into the game. And also thinking about the rewards structure and working closely with Michael on the economy. And yeah, Michael alluded to the fact that we're also changing the branding of Honey to something that probably makes a bit more sense to people outside of the ecosystem. So just thinking holistically about like the player journey through not just our game, but the whole ecosystem. We got some feedback from a couple people and some community members as well that there's a lot of different terms that we've kind of rolled out over the years. We have Mighty Net, we have Mighty Ecosystem, we have Mighty Action Heroes. So part of what I'm doing now is just thinking like, okay, let's kind of take a step back and look at the whole kind of the big picture and see, are there ways we can make not just the game accessible, but everyone else, everything else in the ecosystem fit and make sense. And so, the branding change for locking is part of that as we kind of roll into the next Q2. But you should see, things kind of not dumbed down, but like, be a lot more kind of straightforward and easy to understand from like a player's perspective. From the game side of things, we also want to test a lot of different systems in EA2, but from EA3 onwards, I think you'll start to see a lot more kind of concrete systems and features going in that will lead into like the launch of the full game. So basically, EA2 we're still kind of, fleshing out the core gameplay, but from EA3 onwards, you'll start to see a lot more kind of like, okay, this is, what the progression is going to be like. This is what the metagame will be like. This is what I'm going to be able to do with crafting, maybe a sneak peek of what heroes might be like as well. So you'll start to see a lot more the game take shape, and then you start to see like how, the game will be like on launch, in a couple months. So I think that's very exciting, but also very complex at the same time to figure out. So that's why the team has really been dark, just to make sure like, the whole team's aligned on what we're building, making sure that we're making the right decisions from the game's perspective and also doing right by the audience. Yeah.
I think this
Right.
is a great time to talk more about the upcoming EA2 because really it's only next week. But before we go there, I want to tell a really terrible joke, and I don't expect anyone. I don't expect anyone to laugh. Let me just be clear. Okay. So
Oh God, no. God.
I'm a huge fan of Shrek. Like I love Shrek. It's one of my what we call background movies. Like whenever I have nothing to do or like I'm doing house chores, I'll just put Shrek on. I love Shrek. I don't like the third one,
Oh my God.
but I really love the first one. Well, I really like the first one and the second one and the fourth one. But for those of you familiar with the IP, there's a okay, so just keep this in mind, okay? So yesterday I said to Tom, why is why is our game like an ogre? And obviously the answer is because ogres are like onions. There are lots of layers. We'll give there'll be a bit more context to this in a bit, but essentially I recently learned that, when you want to put a feature in on a roadmap, it's not just about, okay, we're going to build this feature. There are, shout outs to our project manager, who I still will not dox, but, she taught me a lot about just how much work exactly goes into a feature. It's not just, defining the design. There are so many elements to it. The art, the this, the that. I'm not a dev, so I couldn't tell you the ins and outs of it, but there are so many layers to it, just like an onion, just like an ogre. So enough of my bad jokes. I think we should have the team tell you more about upcoming EA2.
All right, I can kick off with that actually. So we were recently just replaying some parts of EA1 just to get a feel for how things were back then, and it like the team I was playing with, we were really surprised with how it felt like quite different to what we have right now. So we were really listening out for the community feedback during early access 1, and there were a few things that really stood out. One of them being people felt the movement was quite slow and that there was a lack of movement options and also a lack of combat variety and options. And so the features we've been working on for EA2 actually, like I mentioned just a bit earlier, we've been trying to tick that box with those as well. So We've already announced that we've got abilities going in. 2 of those. One of them is the dodge roll, so you can actually dodge and shoot at the same time. There's like a little bit of iframes in there, so invincibility while you're in a dodge. And the other one being the charge, which is a bit more of a aggressive ability, so you can actually use that to dash straight through someone and deal some damage to them. And then alongside that, we've got the first of our gadgets, which is actually the grenade. And what Marianne was mentioning just there, like about an onion, like these are more like systems for the game. And so we've had to build this up in a smart way from the start so that we can expand on them later, right? So it's not just we add this ability and this one, it's we build an ability system that is scalable, and we can add more abilities in the future and more gadgets, and actually makes it more easier to do that in the future by doing the hard work at the start, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Also, for any fans of Disney Melee Mania, our previous game, I'll just tell you that the charge behaves very similar to one of the characters in the game. Yeah, but essentially it behaves a lot like the Buzz Lightyear charge, so you can kind of get some reference for how it behaves. Yeah, but abilities will be a huge part of like how we differentiate the heroes in the future as well.
Yeah, the charge remind me of Scion Ultimate from League of Legends. Just like a straight run it down thing. The charge was actually, the distance was much longer in earlier tests. So when I tested it once, I pinged Tom like, I think this one is a bit broken, and then we kind of nerfed it actually. So it's fun to kind of see also the development coming along there. And Tom, if I don't mind digging a bit on like abilities and how we think about abilities, because I feel like first EA, we didn't have abilities, we didn't have gadgets. Now we have abilities and we have gadgets. What should the community know from now on? Like what abilities are in the game, how does it affect heroes and the gameplay, and what to expect in the future? As much as you can share. Trying to get some alpha here.
All right, I'll tread carefully so you can get me to say. So the abilities, they build on the framework of our character classes, actually. So there will be multiple character classes in the game, and each of those has a set of abilities that they can use. So actually, on Early Access 2, we're splitting them, and it doesn't really matter about the character. We just want people to experience the abilities themselves. But moving forward, especially with Early Access 3, that's when the character classes are going to feed into which ability you use. So we actually want you to choose your character, use the ability that you want to get the most out of, and also at the same time give us some feedback on how it feels as well.
Awesome, thank you. And for next EA, just to clarify, you get a random character, right? And then the random character has one ability attached.
That's correct, yeah. So on Early Access 2, you'll be given one of it's actually the same group of characters as we had on EA1, and we've assigned them abilities. So you'll be assigned either the dodge roll or the charge. On the other hand, actually, everyone will have a grenade. So regardless of which character you choose, you always have that. And whenever you want to use a grenade, you just do a right click and you'll just throw a grenade out.
Awesome, thank you.
I think that's really cool. So while I was doing some digging in our drives, because I'm an employee, to write the most recent dev update on our Substack, which you should go subscribe to if you haven't. I saw some art for things that I think are upcoming for the next EA, which is going to happen next month. Really, I saw some art for grenades. I saw some different hero abilities. Is there any alpha you'd be able to share with us?
Or I can talk a bit about so there's another 2 abilities that we follow up with on EA3. So let me put it this way: Early Access 2 has 2 of the abilities, and Early Access 3 has 2 more, and that's where we'll assign them to characters. You'll be able to choose which you use. One of the abilities, if anyone knows Smash Brothers, it feels a lot like the agility attack from Pikachu, that kind of thing. So I won't tell you directly what it is there, but that's a hint where it's going. Another one is more of an aggressive one, very, very 80s martial arts, that kind of thing.
Are we eventually, so I mentioned, right? I mean, clearly I'm not dev, but Tom, do you think you'd be able to share if eventually these abilities are going to be unique to certain heroes, or are they always going to be like a random loadout when you load into the game?
Yeah, so moving forwards, we will actually be assigning abilities by hero class, right? So when you gain a new hero, they will have an ability based on their class. At the start, we'll have one for each class, one ability. But moving forward, there'll be multiple of them. So let's say there's 3, you would get a ability for your class based on that kind of ability roster. And so that's something that's going to make the characters stand out, right? So if you have multiple characters, you can choose, okay, which ability do I want to go in with? Do I want to go in with the charge, or do I want to go with the dodge roll, or one of the other abilities we're bringing in later as well?
That's super cool. I've been playing a lot of Risk of Rain 2. And I really like the, having different abilities and heroes. It gives the game so much more replayability. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I want Michael to talk more about what, those grenade skins I saw. Well, it's okay, let me clarify. It's just art for grenade skins, but before we go too far off topic for the upcoming early access,
All the
um,
alpha you already dropped, Marianne. Go on.
wait, there is one I think there is one feature that we actually talked about in our Substack update that will not be making it through, and in spirit of transparency and getting ahead of things, is actually going to be our player profile. So we previously wrote that the player profile is going to have social connections with both Twitter and Discord. By the way, once that feature drops, if you fill in your username there, that username is reflected in game, but we won't actually have social connections when they ship. We've been having a little bit of difficulty getting getting an API from Twitter. We've been working on that with like our account rep, and hopefully it makes it into the next update. But just so you know what to expect. And now it's time for Michael to give the real alpha, because I am just a snoop looking at files in
You
Google
already
Drive.
dropped it. No, yeah, for the player profiles, just to clarify, right? Like we will have player profiles. You can actually set your own username, and that will also show in the game. So that's good. Yeah, with the socials, we actually wanted to give users an opportunity to connect their socials and actually get a bit of a reward. But Elon being Elon and Twitter being Twitter right now, they just don't issue any new API keys right now. We were actually in conversations with friends of us who kind of take their API keys, but it's not something we really want to do in production. So we just have to wait until Twitter is issuing more API keys. For those who don't know what API keys are, it's basically just it's kind of like an access to allow our users to connect to Twitter, if that makes sense. And without that API key, we can't push that feature. But yeah, so we'll update on that once this is ready. We're gonna ship it. I mean, it's built. We just have to plug in the API key. And yeah, going now to the crafting. So Marianne already dropped it. I mean, I was about to share it anyways, but yeah, she likes the alpha. So I kind of hinted at it before with the crafting, but now that Tom shared about the grenades, then we can talk about the actual crafting. And the crafting is going to be crafting of grenade skins, as Marianne said. So basically the way it's going to work is that you lock your NFTs, being BBS and the Genesis Pass, and as Abel hinted at, we going to a different branding, so we're not going to call it hibernation. And it's a bit bittersweet because we really liked the term hibernation and the whole brand around it with like hibernation and honey. But it just doesn't make sense if you scale it outside of like the bears, right? So like hibernating a Genesis Pass, you're like, okay, that's still okay. But if you have, let's say, other third-party NFTs from our friends that you can also get points for, hibernation didn't really make that much sense. And we felt like it was a bit off-brand. So we're using something that is a bit more MightyNet brand and more like 80s, 90s retro computer theme. We'll share more about this once this is done. But just giving like a heads up here. And the way the locking works again is you lock your NFTs, you get points, and then you get something called supply crates, and they're basically like loot boxes that you can open. Supply crates will be tradable, so you can spend your points, get supply crates. You can sell them on OpenSea if you want, or you just open them, and if you open them, you will basically have craftable resources that you can use. I'm not going super detailed into like how the actual crafting works. I feel like we should save this for another time. But we have an interesting crafting mechanic that I think it will be worth the wait. But what I want to share is like there are a few complexities that go with this, meaning that how much of variety should we give to the grenades in terms of different skins? how should the skins differ from, let's say, a common grenade to a rare one to like an epic one or a legendary? How are they different from like the tail, which is this white stripe, when you throw the grenade, to like the explosion effect, to like the sound and all these things. And then that goes into talking to the art team and figuring out, okay, how do these visual design systems also work later for like the weapons or for the heroes, and how does that differentiate legendary weapons from epic weapons? And we're basically laying now the groundwork of also how rarity works within Mighty Action Heroes. So it's not just like chipping skin grenades, it's about like actually thinking and building the framework and infrastructure to kind of like build scalable ways to later create weapons, to later create heroes, and so that there's a lot of thinking that goes into this. So you don't just build a grenade, you build like the entire gadget contract, and also you're building the entire weapon crafting logic as well with this. So that's where the complexity comes from, and just sharing a bit. Because I feel like it also helps the community to give better feedback if the community understands the context of how the sausage is made, is what Simon likes to say.
Yeah, I think on that point about feedback, we're working on stuff that touches basically all the core systems of the game, and so the next couple of updates are actually very important for us to figure out. So just like the past EAs, I think it'll be super fantastic if we get a ton of feedback on all the systems. As we're always open to kind of thinking about how to best service our fans. So when we roll these things out, if you have any feedback, if you find something that's a little bit confusing, or you discover a bug here and there, like please let us know, and definitely we'll take it into account. And you'll also see a lot of the feedback that some of the great community members gave for EA1 and EA2. So there's a ton of quality of life fixes, ton of bug fixes based on the feedback that you guys gave directly. So I think when we roll these features out for EA2 and 3, please continue to give us the feedback, because it's really appreciated by the team.
So speaking of feedback, I think this is about time where we go into like the open floor portion of our town hall. But before we do that, we do want to give you guys a high level overview of what we're trying to achieve this year. Let me just give a disclaimer right now and say this is not actually like a roadmap alpha. We will release an updated roadmap once we have more firm ship dates. But this is just an overview of what we're hoping to achieve by this year. So we do want to have an accessible open beta at some point this year. What I mean by accessible open beta means that it won't be token gated anymore. It'll be open to anyone to just drop in and play whenever they want. So those of you who are familiar with how we conduct our playable weekends currently, you'll know that it's on a pretty strict timeline. So we want to be able to keep the game open permanently for people, but there are a lot of considerations that go into this. We also want to make sure that it's playable on mobile for both operating systems. I will say, for any of you remotely familiar with mobile development, this is a huge endeavor, but fortunately the team has a lot of experience working on multiple platforms. So we're working on it. Tom, do you want to share a little bit more about what else we're trying to do?
Yeah, so as far as what we're hoping to include in this year and what we're currently thinking about, like Michael and Abel mentioned, there's a lot of discussion right now about what fits where, what makes sense to include at what point. But we really want to work on things like for weapons, also ownable heroes as well. There's a long list we have of core game improvements. Like we know minimap is high on everyone's list, and so we really want to prioritize that and get that out as soon as we can as well. There's details about the way that the weapons feel. So something we're talking about is if two people with the same weapon encounter each other, it shouldn't just be about who shoots first, right? There should be some more element of skill in that as well. And so one thing we're talking about is weapon bloom, for example, where the longer you shoot, the more your accuracy actually starts to drift out. And so it makes more sense to be tactical with when you're shooting rather than just spray and pray, There are other things on the list, like once we get character progression in, and also new weapons as well, because we started out with We've got the base set of weapons, but there's also other weapons on our list. Things like rocket launcher, that kind of thing, like more special weapons or what we're calling power weapons that we want to get in the game later as well.
Abel, I know you have more stuff to share. Let's go.
Yeah, and we also have, we'll continue with leaderboards and seasons, but they may take a different form, later in the year. One thing that I'm personally working on, very hard right now is like I mentioned, the meta game, and really like when we roll out crafting, that will be really the foundation layer of the meta game, and we're gonna do a lot of kind of testing and making sure that we roll that out smoothly and see how players also interact with crafting, what they like and dislike about it. And that will form the basis of metagame and progression going forward. With the leaderboards specifically, we're also thinking about how that ties into the whole season kind of idea that we're having. So we want to roll out regular updates to our players, and it makes sense that we roll them out, in seasons. It also gives us a good way to, run live events and tournaments throughout the season. So if you played, again, like if you play Battle Royale or Disney Melee Mania, you'll know kind of the concept of the season. So every season there might be a different theme. You might unlock different rewards. The leaderboards also reset every season, giving new players a chance to come in and compete for prizes. For Mighty Action Heroes, it will be a bit more involved than that. We've taken a lot of learnings from our past games, and then try to kind of improve on them. So I think this will be like the best version of seasons we've ever shipped in any game. I'm not gonna hype it up too much, but that's what at least we're intending to ship with this game, because we know that it's important that live ops and live events really drive user engagement and hopefully bring more players into the game eventually. Michael, maybe you want to touch on anything else that I missed?
Yeah, I think that was a great overview. Just wanted to kind of emphasize on like the iterative approach that we take. So like the leaderboards right now, they're very bare bones. We will actually have the leaderboards up again for the next EA, and there's going to be also trophies again. So do your best. But that eventually will then get into actual season-based leaderboards with ELO and with rewards and ranked and all that fun stuff. And as we build this out, we really appreciate feedback and yeah, for us to like learn from you guys.
And with that, we are actually going to move into like the open floor portion of our town hall. So at this point, if you have any feedback or if you have any questions that you want to share with us, just put your hand up and I'll bring you up on stage. We do have a first question from Duststorm, so I'll read it out and one of us will answer. If you don't have a microphone or you're shy about speaking, feel free to type in the chat as well. I can read it out for you. So we've got this first question from Duststorm. Duststorm said that they heard something about locking friend NFTs for points in our ecosystem, and they also asked what projects do we consider friends. They've seen some interactions with Playcans on Twitter, but they're not sure of what else we got. Michael, I think you're the best person to answer this, and I can talk a little bit about the friends.
Yeah, I guess you can talk about our friends. We have a few friends of the bear. I would say there's just nothing concrete to be announced right now. Just to say that we do have plans and we do have the optionality to allow friends NFTs to collect points in our ecosystem. The way we think about this is basically collabs with other communities. So that's basically one way of engagement. That's also something that Abel, Marianne, of course, but also Abel and Tom and I talked about a lot, like how do collabs with other communities look like? Giving partner NFTs points is one of the things. There's other few things that we're thinking about. Marianne, anything? Yeah, and also just Duststorm, to answer your question, nothing immediate right now to be announced, but that's something in the future that we want to do.
Yeah,
Marianne,
so I want to
anything
add on. I'll add just a little bit about like how we view collabs. So I think in the Web3 space, it's really common for people to be like, oh, here's a partnership or here's a collab, and really all they do is just an AMA. I think what we want to do is actually to go deeper than that. So instead of just being like, okay, we partner with you because we we did an AMA together. What we're really hoping is to eventually have them be a part of our ecosystem. And of course, discussions like these take a lot of time. They go through, there are lots of different functions in the team that have to be stakeholders, have to go through all these discussions. So like Michael said, we don't have anyone concrete to announce at the moment. We have been talking a lot of playcans on Twitter, yes, but I will say that's also due to the fact that they're extremely good at shit posting on Twitter. Like, I've personally DM'd that account to compliment them. And it takes two to tango, right? So but yeah, we do want to see, we are trying to see who we can collab with on the deeper level, and those conversations take time. Actually, if you have any suggestions for who you think we should be friends with, we're also all ears,
Yeah, also want to add to this, like the timing needs to be right as well. I mean, we've done some giveaways with some communities also for, significant whitelist spots, and we've seen that how do I put it, the diamond hands rate of those giveaways were not that high. So a lot of the folks, like a lot of people, like a lot of communities that don't quite understand what we're building, let's put it that way, don't really feel like holding on to the things that we give them. So if you partner too early with communities that don't fully understand what we're doing, we feel like, if you give them points and then they get loot crates and they might just sell it, and that's not beneficial for our holders, because it creates a lot of sell pressure. So that there's a right time for these things. I think as the game gets better, as we get more traction, those partnerships will become a bit more important, I think, and a bit more timely. But this said, Marianne, actually, if you want to share a bit of alpha of like giving access to our early access weekends to other communities that we're friends with, maybe there's anything there that you can share already.
Yeah, actually, this is in direct response to some of the feedback we've gotten in the holder channel from folk like Lems, who's in the audience. We do actually want to open the game up to more people. I think we were just trying to figure out the best way to do that, because more people coming into the game, seeing how awesome it is going to help our ecosystem for sure. So for starters, for the most recent playtest that's coming up, the one on March 17th, we're actually working for guild partners. And this was also something I wanted to bring up. We aren't partnering with our guild partners in terms of, like, their tokens being able to be locked. I think that's a bigger discussion. But they are some of the first friends that we've had. So we've got Indie GG, we've got Valuna, we've got Blackpool, we've got Avocado DAO and Ready Player DAO, and they have all been extremely good friends and amazing partners to us. We're actually going to run a couple of game nights over this upcoming EA weekend with both Valuna and with Ready Player DAO. And they've been fantastic at this stage of our journey, actually. So to what Michael mentioned, it's really important. But it's like the timing of the collab is also really important. But we're also going to work with them to open the game up just a little with this current playtest. So we're leaving the selection mechanic up to them at this point. But for future EAs, we want to start opening up even more. And I think, last year we rolled out the red carpet to certain communities. We might just roll out the red carpet again. It's getting a little dusty in our storeroom.
Also, I will add that around the time of the first EA, we also onboarded and hired a new head of partnerships. Terry's been doing a great job, really handling the partnership side of things. Obviously, nothing to announce right now, but we've also been speaking to a lot of, interesting partners in the space. So, you might see some of that pan out over the course of this year. But yeah, like Marianne mentioned, we're also working with a lot of guilds, a lot of, partners that we've been working with since the very beginning, and they've been very supportive. And obviously, the focus is really on our part to just deliver a great experience so that, we can service, you guys and also all our guild partners. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully, we can do good by you guys and appreciate the patience in kind of, making sure that we deliver on these things, because good things take time. So, yeah, that's all I'll say about it.
I feel like we've been talking a lot. Does anyone in the audience have questions for us? And thank you, Lems. We appreciate you
Thank you,
too.
Lems.
I think your feedback has been particularly helpful because you don't just give critical feedback, you also follow up with suggestions. So thank you. Shout out to you, buddy.
Yeah, big shout out. I guess on that note, just also feedback, because I think that was, hold on. Uncle Brian was that, yeah. So Uncle Brian asked, in terms of trading, why our NFTs are not tradable on Blur right now, why you can't provide liquidity there. So with this whole like OpenSea and Blur dance that's been going on, I just want to share a bit of transparency there. Basically, we added the OpenSea like registry to our contract, which basically blocked Blur and added OpenSea just to that we basically get the royalties. And the reason for this is that we think that royalties, and we kind of take like I would say like a strong opinion on this. I think royalties are very beneficial to the space. It allows us to basically align the incentives with the players and us as a company to kind of continue building, continue shipping, and not sell too many assets. Because if you don't have royalties, what's probably going to happen is that you have to lean more into primary sales, which means you sell more NFTs, which means that existing NFTs might go down in value. So that's not great for anybody. That's why we like royalties, just as a shout out there. That's why we also implemented the registry from OpenSea to kind of capture royalties there. But then with the recent Blur and OpenSea stuff going on, OpenSea changed the stance and basically said, okay, let's allow Blur again. And only if you do that, you get royalties. But just for transparency, that one was on us. We didn't update the registry after they did that, so that I think that was about 3 weeks ago. So since then we didn't get royalties, which is fine. It's on us. But what was bad was that our NFTs were not tradable on Blur, which they should have been. So shout out to Uncle Brian. Thanks for the reminder. And that one was on me. I should have had that on my radar. I thought we didn't have to change anything, but we actually had to. Now we subscribe to any future changes that OpenSea throws our way. We can also unsubscribe anytime if we don't like them. So basically we don't have to like always manually upgrade. But we fixed that yesterday or 2 days ago. Simon did that actually while being on travel. And so now you can actually trade on Blur. You can provide liquidity on Blur if you want to, meaning that you can add bids there. I think that should also qualify you for the airdrop, although I think our collection still doesn't have enough volume to give meaningful Blur rewards. But just wanted to give an update there. And just going back to other questions here in the chat. Hold on, just open the chat room. Yeah, I just see Lems typing +1 for royalties, but yeah, this has all been a wild ride. I feel like marketplaces will be a rocky place for the next few months. The whole royalty discussion actually just we had a lot of conversations about this internally. And Lems, curious to hear, and everybody else curious to hear your thoughts on this. But we kind of need to wait and see where marketplaces will go. We're thinking maybe eventually build our own marketplace, just because, and that's just an idea. I'm not saying this is on the roadmap or anything. This is just an initial idea. Also to like really give a better buying experience and selling experience to our users. I think OpenSea is a very general marketplace. Blur is for like pro traders. You can't expect like a new user to use Blur. And again, OpenSea, I feel like there's a better way to show game assets and what they do in the game. Big shout out to the Treasure ecosystem and Trove, how they do this. So Abel and I, we've been pretty deep in their ecosystem and really like what they're doing. They recently announced with Kuroro Beasts, which is a game that is kind of like Pokemon inspired. They announced kind of like how trading Kuroro Beasts on their marketplace will look like. So you actually see the different types and abilities in the actual image. So it's kind of like seeing metadata much easier, and I think that for games is great. I don't know. I feel like in the future, I don't see that OpenSea will be the only marketplace. I feel like there will be specialized marketplaces for gaming, for art, for music. We already see this for art. I guess, and for music as well. But I feel like gaming is lagging a bit behind. We've seen a lot on the Solana ecosystem now moving over to Polygon, so let's see what comes there. So that's like Magic Eden and others. So I don't really want to build like our own marketplace, but it could be something that we might need to do to improve usability and like UX, and also to get like stay with the royalties. I agree that maybe the like 10% royalties could be too steep. We also have to figure out like what is the fair percent number that makes sense with users, and what are some royalty structures that could make sense. So for example, we have these points for locking, so we're even thinking about, okay, if you trade a lot on with our NFTs, maybe you get more points for the locking, for example, and then you can trade that for supply crates. So it's kind of like our own Blur airdrop. But again, I'm just saying all this with a big disclaimer. This is super early stage thinking, but just wanted to share a bit of transparency how we think about this. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is that we then, have to sell, let's say, heroes or weapons, which we are thinking to do for very, very rare ones. And we'll share more about this later. We have like some ideas there. But if you feel like the majority of heroes and weapons and other rewards that go into circulation, they should come from ranked rewards and season rewards. That's a stance that we feel strongly about. But at the end of the day, also we need to make sure that we keep shipping with the game, and that we can pay our people. Because if you keep shipping with the game, that means also you guys can keep playing, and also the assets they keep being worth and increasing in worth over time. So that's also very important that we can feed ourselves before we feed others, if that makes sense. So just sharing a bit of this in the open. Just going through the chat right now. Marianne, anything you wanted to add to this, or
No,
should I
dude,
just
I
go
think
to the next question?
I think you covered it pretty well, but we do have a question from Duststorm that just came in. Maybe you are able should take it. Maybe Abel?
I guess I pass it to Abel.
Michael
but,
can take this.
Yeah, full transparency. I'm a big fan of Treasure. I've been farming magic with my loot bags back in the days, and Bridge to Arbitrum. So I've been with them for quite some time. I actually invested as an angel investor in their seed round, and I was in conversations to even join them when I was in conversations with Mighty Bear Games. So they're friends. I like them. I ended up joining Mighty Bear Games because I wanted to build like more high fidelity games. But I really like what Treasure has been doing so far. We do have a conversation open, so just gonna say that much. But because I'm biased, I want to share. I want Abel to kind of share a bit how we think about Treasure, because Abel is also a big fanboy and has been playing around with the ecosystem a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're big fans of all the games there, and also the Trove and Treasure team in general. Just speaking to them, and like you mentioned, like the way we technically thinking about our locking and points. We saw some of the ways that the Beacon was doing their kind of moving of assets from the marketplace to the game, and so we were kind of thinking about how to structure ours, and then want to get as much feedback as possible. So that's when we also tried to connect with their team. I mean, nothing concrete from like a partnerships perspective, but always keen to see and uplift other game partners in the space. I think anybody can see that Trove is doing great things for the games on their platforms, and they've also gotten great games on their platforms. And the game teams there are really killing it. So I think for us, we want to make sure that the game is great, and that's where we're putting our focus on. But we're always speaking to good partners in the space, so who knows what can happen from these conversations. But definitely, like from a company point of view, we don't consider these other games and other partners in the games kind of space and ecosystem as like competitors, but rather like we know the game space is so new and so young, and it's we want to learn from the best, right? We want to be friends and partners with the best. So We want to uplift the whole industry, and then the more good games appear in the space, the more eyeballs will be on games in general on the blockchain, and yeah, hopefully we can be there amongst the conversation.
Thank you, Abel. Just wanted to go back to also what Lem said. So another big brain comment from our friend. Yeah, we talked about the marketplaces. I think Lems is very right. You need to have big brand recognition. I think Axie was able to do that when Axie had a lot of attention. They could even build their own chain. I don't think even building our own chain, I don't think that's the right move. That goes a bit too far. But building our own marketplace could be the right move if we're big enough. But I would prefer to kind of partner with more game specific marketplace. And as Lems pointed out, our NFT contracts are upgradable, which means we can adjust to things that come up. So that was actually like we initially did that because we feel like, okay, if we mess up, we can fix it. Like it's easier to fix bugs if they're upgradable. But actually, it was really good now because we can add something like the registry for OpenSea and other contracts that are not upgradable are sadly quite left behind, which is not great, honestly. I don't know. We need to see where the space moves, but it proved for us to be a lucky thing that we have upgradable contracts. 888bit has to jump. Thank you for joining, friend. Yeah, so with and then with royalties, yeah, I think also we need to see like what is a good percentage numbers, like what makes sense from us as a studio and also for the community. Yeah, I think also taking too much of a share. I think Uncle Brian mentioned this, like maybe that was a bull market thing where people took 10-15%. Maybe that's not very sustainable. So that's something we're thinking about and reconsidering. And in terms of like monetization plans, that's actually something I wanted to double click on. Abel, can you or do you want to share a bit about kind of like the battle pass kind of ideas, like season pass ideas that we have? Because that I feel like that ties into monetization, and we're talking a lot about this internally. So any whatever you can share so far, Abel, feel free to share a bit of our thinking and where our mind is right now.
Yeah, so I mean, I talked about seasons previously and alluded to that. So, I mean, the way we're kind of thinking about structuring monetization, we want to make it fair, but also we want to make sure that we're not just like selling things for the sake of selling. The whole topic on royalties has also been kind of brought into the conversation now, right? Like as we're building, we just need to assume that we're gonna go with zero royalties, because that's kind of what the market is trending to. It's not something that we agree with, but we have to build with that in mind, and this is just being completely transparent, right? And so again, we're just thinking about how do we as a studio maintain profitability and then continue to make great game features without kind of like gouging our players, right? So we don't want to just keep releasing new things for people to buy for the sake of buying. So these things need to have value. And so with the season pass, I think it's something that as a studio we've had a lot of experience building before, understanding how players progress through a season, structuring that in a fair way, making sure that these things don't get botted. I think it's also very important in this space. And so and the last thing I'll add to this also is that definitely and 100%, like we haven't forgotten about the minters and the people who have stayed with us. So if you are a Mighty Net Genesis pass holder, if you are a Big Bear Syndicate holder, as we roll out these things, there will definitely be benefits for you guys. Like you might get a free mints for some of these things that we roll out. So as the game rolls out, and even after we've opened the game up for more people to join, holders of our NFTs will definitely reap some of the benefits.
Thank you for the alpha, sir. Yeah, so that's basically how we think about monetization right now, so that users can buy, like in an ideal world later when we have the mobile app as well, that normal folks could just buy the battle pass even with an in-app purchase in the mobile app, and then if you are on basically browser desktop, you can also then buy it there. And as Abel said, we will have some benefits for NFTs holders for this as well.
I think one thing I'll add is that we've shared so much information in the past hour. Please be assured that we will also be updating our light paper at some point. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that we've been working on that has since evolved. So we'll also be updating that soon. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, because instead of sitting here in awkward silence, we could actually drop a little bit of alpha before we continue with the rest of our meetings for the day. So last call for any questions. Does anyone have anything pressing that you want to ask us?
I think also feedback is also enough. Doesn't have to be questions. So if you have any things you want to share with us, we could comment on it. Any sentiment is okay.
Yeah. I think we have time for just one more speaker, though, regardless of whether it's a question or a feedback.
All eyes on Dust Storm typing. No, that's not pressure.
That's true. I'm watching him too.
Take your time. Yeah. I guess one thing I wanted to share, maybe that's something for when merch store, Marianne.
Dude, so I can actually say something. We are looking at merch. I don't think we are gonna dive into merch the way a lot of PFP projects have, but I can absolutely say this because this is on its way to our office now. We have printed a bunch of dev team shirts. I do have enough to give a little out. So once they arrive and once we QC them, maybe we'll give some of them away. Who knows?
Awesome.
That Storm has his question.
Go on, read it, Marianne. I think it could be something for Tom. But
yeah,
go on, Marianne.
Okay. So last question of the night. The Storm asks, here's a small one. I noticed melee weapons like lightsabers in some of the early promotional images. Are those planned for the future?
Wow, that was well spotted. Yeah, so we are actually talking about various different types of weapons. So I mentioned power weapons is one thing we're talking about coming up for the rest of this year. And part of that will be a conversation about is melee weapons that, and also like when does it make sense to put that in, like the order of the weapons that we roll in later in this year. So yeah, you've seen the art. It is something we are definitely discussing, but I can't see right now when we would get that in.
I would say though, when you play the next EA and you use dash, for example, this is a nice gap closer. So that, opens up the conversation for melee weapons even more.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, definitely something that could be used in like a lunge or bringing people close together for an attack there.
Yeah, just, back to the next EA, really, give us a lot of feedback and thoughts, what you think about the current version of the game. That helps us a lot. Like last time, that was super valuable for us to understand how it's perceived. And that's one of the reasons why we're basically launching the early builds to basically the community to work together, build together, and create this together. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, so keep your feedback coming. We are always reading it. But I do think it's about time for us to wrap up, actually. So I have let me see. Michael, do you want to share alpha about what we're renaming Honey to? I think this is a little reward. It's a little reward for people who stayed all the way. I mean, come on, dude, you have to reward them.
All right. So, so I said earlier, it needs to be in the theme of like the 80s, 90s retro computer theme, and something that Carolina, our growth lead, actually came up with, which is an arcade actually. So it's like so we have this concept. Marianne, can we already say like what the world is? We can, right? Like, can I talk more about the lore, or do we want our community to explore?
We've shown a little bit of it in some of our earlier trailers about the dude sitting at the desk, playing his computer. Yes.
All right. Let's talk more about this stuff. So the dude on the desk, we call him the director, and he's kind of like the person that's kind of pulling the strings there, and the director has his computer. The director has his disc where he loads up the different games, and the director also will have an arcade, and the arcade basically locks those discs, locks those bears, locks friends, and you get points in the arcade basically. So what we rebranded to, it's the Mighty Cade. As a this arcade in there. I hope I don't have to explain it because then it's actually not a great name. But yeah, it's Mighty Cade. So CryptoCade, shout out to you. I hope it's not too close to your name. It's spelled with a C. So yeah, Mighty Cade is gonna be the new device where you basically lock your NFTs, and then you get points that are called stars. So those are like stars points, which stands for, and that's just for the lore, it stands for secure time lock arcade redemption system, meaning that you time lock your assets into the arcade and you can redeem it for supply crates. So that starts. So yeah, Mighty Cade, you lock your NFTs there, you get stars, and then you can trade them in for supply crates, and then you can open the supply crates to craft your grenades with. And the crafting, there's some more stuff there. There's actually a 2-layer crafting, let's put it that way. But I'm going to reserve this for next time, Marianne. You're not going to get this out of me.
Yeah, that's all good, dude. I think the last bit of alpha that actually before I share this last bit of alpha, it just occurred to me that we're changing the name of honey to stars, right? There is a certain type of cereal. I think it's only sold in like Southeast Asia, Singapore. It's called honey stars. It is delicious. And let me just say, I grew up eating this when I moved to the US. There were no honey stars. It was a tragedy. But let me not get us off track. I think the last bit of alpha I'll drop is that we know a lot of people have our bears, and we want to help develop. We want to help give you a reason to have them as your PFP with pride. So at some point, I'm not saying when, we're gonna run a small social media PFP campaign where if you switch your PFP to one of our Big Bear Syndicate bears, and send us proof of it, you get to invite your friends to the next EA, regardless of whether they hold an NFT from our ecosystem or not. So stay tuned for that. I think we have one final question from Lems, and
Yeah, I actually want to circle back on that.
we just have a little bit of time. We can answer that, and then
Okay.
I think we have to go.
Okay. Yeah, no, I feel like I want to give more context on the locking, and it actually went back to the custody thing that I said before. So basically the way we want to do the locking, it's quite similar to how the Beacon does it and how Pirate Nation does it. It's another game that's on Polygon. And the Beacon is a game on Treasure and Arbitrum. Basically, when you basically put your NFTs into the arcade, so you time lock the NFTs, it doesn't leave your wallet. And that's something we actually changed, because before we basically said, all right, the NFTs should move from your wallet into the locking contract and then just stay there. But we figured that a better UX is probably if they stay in your wallet and they just get locked. Locking meaning that they just don't become, like, they become non-transferable while the asset is being locked. But building it that way requires that we own the NFTs that are not transferable. Sorry, not the NFTs, the NFT contract. So we can only implement that into the Big Bear Syndicate and the Genesis Pass because we own them. But for friends, what Lems basically asked, for friends, we can't lock friends' NFTs, obviously, because we can't change the NFT contracts there. So I guess for friends, then there won't be any time lock. It will just be like, you could become a friend, join the arcade, like the Mighty Cade, and then you get points over time. But with the Big Bear Syndicate and the Genesis Pass, you get this time lock boost. So if you lock it for a few months, the longer you lock, the more boost you get. And that applies, again, like for the assets in our ecosystem. Yeah, so it's like a booster multiplier with MAH assets. So for now, the Mighty Cade is for the Genesis Pass and for the Big Bear Syndicate. If you lock for a month, let's say you get 20% boost. If you lock for 3 months, you get like 60% boost. If you lock for 6 months, you get like 180% boost, just example numbers, right? But the longer you lock, the more you get. And then even when the time is over and you don't unlock, you continue to get points with that multiplier afterwards as well. So that's very similar to how Treasure is doing their locking. But again, as a partner, you just stay at this flat points when you basically say, oh, I want to put the NFT into the Mighty Cade, which doesn't move it from your wallet. You can trade anytime. Can you do staggered locks so I can lock 5 for a year and 5 for 6 months? Yes, you can. So you can do that in like different waves, so to speak. And you can also unlock them whenever you like when they're unlockable. So after the time, you can, let's say you locked 5 for like 6 months, and then after 6 months you want to unlock 2. You can also do that. So you can like individually unlock afterwards. And then, you know, as a hint, you know, don't like if you want to continue getting these points, don't like unlock them and lock them again. Just leave them locked, and you continue getting those points. And yeah, I guess that's as much as I can share here. And also, we have a similar thing for the import and export of assets. So that's another thing that we talked about for a long time, and that also informed that decision, which is basically when users are playing with the assets in the game, we want to, like, there's going to be crafting in the game as well. So like basically like the crafting is going to happen off chain, which means like you're importing the assets into the game and then you craft, and some of the craftable resources will be consumed, which means, you know, they have to leave your wallet. So for crafting, we actually have an infrastructure that we're building right now. Not for crafting, for import and export, where basically you import assets into the game. If those are consumables, so, you know, 1155 NFTs, they actually get burned when you import it, and then when you export, they just get reminted into your wallet. But for 721s, very similar to the Mighty Cade, if you import, let's say, a hero or a grenade into the game, it just gets locked that you can't trade the hero or the grenade while it's in the game. That specifically also helps when you like send heroes on missions, for example, in the game, that we can be sure that, you know, while the hero is on a 1 week, 2 week mission, you can't trade the hero, basically. The difficult thing there, though, is, and that's something we're still trying to figure out, and I'm curious to hear what you think, how other projects do this well, is that once it's locked, you could technically list it on OpenSea, but you can't sell it. So that's something that we still looking into, just to share a bit of transparency. But yeah, so I hope Lemstead gave you a bit of more context on how we're thinking, and always grateful for your feedback and for your thoughts. All right,
I'm
Marianne,
sorry
over
to
to you.
interrupt. Yeah,
I
but I
went
think
I
like
went on a tangent here. Got really excited
it's
about
okay.
talking about this.
It's okay. We still have Holder Chat, and you can always, you know, phone each other up directly. But you should do it on Holder Chat so other
Yeah,
people can
I'll be there,
participate.
Lems. Feel free to ask questions there. I'll be there.
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up now because I think we have other meetings to go to. But just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to come down this morning and listen live. I know it's pretty early for our friends who are based in Asia. If you have any feedback whatsoever, whether about the time that we held this town hall or about the things that we've discussed in the course of this hour and a half we've spent together, feel absolutely free to let us know. I think, you know, as we mentioned at the start, we want to continue this cadence of communication with our community, and we do take feedback seriously. We read through everything, and we would love to share more of what we're building with you. But in the meantime, I think this is where we'll stop for this month. And yes, I say this month because we are going to start having town halls every month. The next one is likely to be somewhere in the middle of April, and I'm hoping to increase the production value of it as well, and that we'll be able to share, you know, sneak peeks of works in progress. But we'll see how that goes. So thanks everybody for coming down this morning. We really appreciate all of you here. We will speak to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.